To anyone looking in from the outside, my life looked like a glossy magazine spread. A husband with a good job, a house in a quiet suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio. A rescue dog named Biscuit who shed on everything. I was 31, working as a senior paralegal at a mid-sized law firm downtown, and from the outside, I had checked every box on the list someone hands you when you're young and still believed the list means something. What they couldn't see was that I hadn't felt like a wife in almost 2 years. I felt like a roommate who did all the cooking. My husband. I'll call him my husband, because that's the only title that matters here. Was 34 when this started unraveling. He was the kind of man who was charming in public and exhausting in private, not cruel, not violent, just slowly, quietly dismissive. The kind of dismissive that doesn't leave marks. The kind you can't point to at a dinner party without sounding dramatic. We met in our mid-20s at a work happy hour. He was funny. He made me feel like the most interesting person in the room. I fell for that version of him completely. By the time we'd been married 4 years, that version had quietly packed his bags and left without saying goodbye. The fights were never about big things. They were always about groceries. About how I loaded the dishwasher. About why I still went out for drinks with my coworkers on Fridays instead of coming straight home. Once, and I still think about this, he stood in the kitchen and told me I was performing independence like it was a character flaw. Like wanting my own life was something I was doing at him. I should have left then. I know that now. But I stayed because I was scared. Because we had a mortgage together. Because I thought maybe I was the problem. Because it's much easier to see these things clearly from the other side. The first time I noticed something was off, it was a Thursday in February. I came home from work and the guest bathroom smelled like perfume. Not my perfume. Something heavier, a little sweet, like department store samples. I stood in the hallway for a full minute, just breathing it in, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. I wasn't imagining things. I didn't say anything. I filed it away. I got very quiet and I started paying attention. Over the next 6 weeks, I noticed the way he angled his phone away when I walked past. The Saturday afternoon, he said he was going to help a friend move and came home 4 hours later with not a single scuff on his shoes or sweat on his shirt. The weekend trip to Chicago for a work conference, where his company, when I called to ask about reimbursement forms, had no record of any conference that weekend. I'm a paralegal. I know how to build a case. So I built one. I didn't hire a private investigator. I couldn't afford it, and I didn't need to. I checked credit card statements I had every legal right to access as his spouse. I found 2 dinners at a restaurant in the short north that I had never been to, both on nights he told me he was working late. I found a hotel charge from the Chicago weekend. 1 room. Checked in Friday, checked out Sunday. I printed everything. I put it in a manila folder in my work bag where he would never look. I want to be honest about how I felt during those weeks, because it wasn't what you'd expect. I wasn't devastated. Not yet. I was mostly just tired in a way that went down into my bones. Like some part of me had already known for a long time and had just been waiting for the rest of me to catch up. I called my best friend, my actual best friend, who I've known since we were 14 and who has never once told me what I wanted to hear when I needed to hear the truth. And I told her everything over a bottle of wine at her apartment in German Village. She listened without interrupting, which she almost never does. And when I finished, she put her hand over mine and said, "Okay, so what do you want to do? Not what are you going to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do?" I thought about it for a long time. "I want him to know that I knew," I said finally. "I want him to feel what it's like to be the one who doesn't see it coming." She looked at me over her glass. "Then let's think about this. Carefully." We spent 3 hours at that kitchen table. By the time I drove home, I had a plan. The plan had 2 parts. Part 1. I called my firm's family law attorney, a woman I had worked alongside for 3 years and deeply respected. And I quietly asked for a referral. Not for my case specifically, not yet. Just to understand my options. She referred me to an attorney named Joanna at another firm, a woman with a reputation for being thorough and, when necessary, ruthless. I made a consultation appointment for the following week. Part 2 required more patience. I knew he was going to bring her here eventually. I could feel it. He had gotten bold. The kind of bold that comes from getting away with something for long enough that you stop being careful. He had started staying out later, making up less convincing excuses. He had stopped bothering to shower before he came home. So I waited. I kept everything exactly the same on the surface. I cooked dinner. I asked about his day. I watched television next to him on the couch, and I let him believe that I was completely in the dark, that I was still the same person who trusted him without question, who would never check a credit card statement, who would never notice the perfume. I became a very good actress that spring. The call from Joanna went well. She walked me through everything. Ohio is an equitable distribution state, which meant the division of assets would be based on what was considered fair, not necessarily 50-50. We had the house, 2 cars, joint savings, and a retirement account that I had been contributing to longer than he had. She was thorough. She was calm. She made me feel like I had options, which is the most important thing anyone had made me feel in years. I signed a retainer. I gave her the folder. That was on a Wednesday. The following Saturday, he told me he had a work event in the evening, a networking dinner. He wouldn't be home until late. I nodded and told him to have fun. He left at 6. I waited 20 minutes just to be sure, and then I called my best friend. He left at 6. I waited 20 minutes just to be sure, and then I called my best friend. "It's time," I said. She arrived at my house at 7. We sat in my kitchen drinking sparkling water, and she held my hand and we waited. He came home at 9:30. I heard the car in the driveway. Then I heard a second car door. I had positioned myself in the living room, on the couch, with a glass of wine and a book I was absolutely not reading. When the front door opened, I looked up. He walked in first. And then she walked in behind him. She was younger than I expected. Maybe my age, maybe a little younger. Pretty, in an effortful way. The kind of pretty that requires a lot of maintenance and knows it. She was wearing a dress that was clearly meant for somewhere nicer than my suburban living room, and she had the particular expression of someone who had been told the coast was clear. He stopped dead when he saw me. I watched his face go through several emotions in about 2 seconds: surprise, panic, a very quick, desperate attempt at calculation. "You're home," he said, as if this were surprising, as if I did not live here. "I am," I said pleasantly. "I live here." The woman behind him had gone very still. "I thought you were going to your sister's," he said. "I never said that." I smiled. "You said that, to yourself apparently." There was a long silence. He started to say something. I stood up. "Actually," I said, "there's someone I want you both to meet." My best friend had been waiting in the kitchen. She walked in holding her phone, calm as anything, wearing the particular expression she gets when she has already decided how something is going to go. The woman in the doorway made a sound. It wasn't a scream exactly, it was the sound a person makes when the floor drops out from under them. A short, high, involuntary noise, like air escaping. "You know her?" my husband said, looking between them. But the woman wasn't looking at him. She was looking at my best friend. And my best friend, I have to give her credit. She is genuinely one of the most composed people I have ever met, just tilted her head slightly and said, "Hi, Tara." This requires some backstory. My best friend, Simone, had dated someone for almost 2 years in her late 20s. That relationship had ended badly. He had been dishonest with her in ways that took her a long time to recover from. She had moved on, built a good life, met someone new. What neither of us knew until about 3 weeks before this night was that Tara, this woman standing in my doorway in her going-out dress, had been one of the people her ex had been seeing behind Simone's back. Simone had only figured this out recently when a mutual friend mentioned it at a birthday dinner, not realizing Simone hadn't known. Simone had come to me with this information in the same quiet way she comes to me with everything important. We had both sat with it for a moment and then looked at each other. "You know what's interesting," she had said slowly, "is that my ex and I have never formally closed things out with her. She still thinks I don't know." I had thought about that for a long moment. "Does she know you're my best friend?" Simone had smiled. "Not yet." Tara knew in that doorway that something had gone very wrong. You could see her doing the math in real time. Why was this woman here? This woman she recognized, this woman she had wronged, standing in the living room of the house she had been told was safe to walk into. My husband was still trying to figure out what was happening. "You two know each other?" he said. "We do now," I said. I watched Tara's expression shift through several things: embarrassment, and then a flicker of something more calculating, and then, as she looked at Simone, something closer to genuine shame. Whatever else she was not a person who had managed to fully suppress her conscience. "I owe you an apology," she said to Simone. Her voice was smaller than she probably wanted it to be. Simone looked at her for a moment. "Yeah," she said. "You do, but tonight's not really about me." She meant it was about me. It was about the 4 years I had spent in this house. It was about the credit card statements in the manila folder. It was about every dinner I had cooked, and every question I had swallowed, and every night I had lain next to him wondering what I was doing wrong when the entire time the answer was nothing. I was doing nothing wrong. He was just the kind of person who does this. I looked at my husband. "I want you out tonight," I said. "You can take your clothes. The rest we'll figure out through our attorneys." "Our attorneys," he repeated. Like the word didn't make sense. "Joanna's been briefed," I said. "She has everything she needs. You'll hear from her office Monday morning." He looked at Tara. Tara was looking at the floor. "The thing about finally saying the true thing out loud, the thing you have been holding for months, turning over in your hands in the dark, is that it doesn't feel triumphant the way you imagine. It doesn't feel like a movie moment. It feels like setting down something very heavy that you didn't realize you had been carrying." He left that night with 2 bags and Biscuit's leash, which he then had to come back for because Biscuit was staying with me. Tara left without saying much else. I watched her walk to her car from the window. I don't know what she was thinking. I don't particularly need to. The divorce was finalized 7 months later. Ohio courts, equitable distribution. I kept the house because I had been the one making the majority of the mortgage payments for the past 18 months. Joanna had documented this thoroughly. We split the joint savings. I kept my retirement account. I kept Biscuit. The morning after it was all finalized, I drove to a coffee shop about a mile from my house that I had always liked and never gone to enough, and I sat in the window for 2 hours with a lavender latte and a novel, and I watched people walk past on the sidewalk. Just regular people living regular Saturday mornings. I felt for the first time in a very long time like I was one of them. Like I was just a person, sitting in a window with nothing to dread and no performance to maintain and no one to come home and disappoint. There is a particular kind of peace that comes not from getting everything you wanted, but from finally getting out of something you should have left sooner. It's quieter than happiness. It's more permanent. Simone came and met me for lunch. We split a sandwich and she told me about a guy she'd been seeing for a few months, a middle school science teacher who brought her coffee from the good place near his apartment and texted her pictures of interesting rocks he found on his walks. She was trying not to like him too much yet, she said. She was being careful. "You should like him exactly the right amount," I told her. She laughed. "Yeah, maybe." I thought about what I knew now that I didn't know 4 years ago. I thought about what I would tell someone just starting out, someone standing at the beginning of the thing I had just finished. Never give up your financial independence. Not for love, not for convenience, not because someone makes you feel like ambition is something to be ashamed of. Your name on a bank account is not a sign of distrust. It is a sign that you are a person, fully, regardless of your relationship status. The moment someone tries to make you feel small for wanting that, pay attention. That moment is information. The other thing, and I mean this, is that you are allowed to be strategic. You are allowed to think clearly and quietly, and to take your time and to build your case before you blow it open. That's not manipulation. That's just not letting someone else control the story. I still live in the house. I've painted the guest room a color called Dusty Sage that I chose entirely by myself. I have a standing Friday night dinner with Simone and 2 other friends from the neighborhood. I got a promotion at work last spring, senior paralegal to lead paralegal, which comes with a title change and a salary increase that I negotiated myself. Biscuit still sheds on everything. Some things don't change, but I do. I changed. I am still changing. And for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of who I'm becoming on the other side of it. I've thought a lot about what made that night possible, not the logistics of it, the waiting, the positioning, the phone call to Simone, but the thing underneath all of that, the decision, made quietly on an ordinary Tuesday, to stop pretending I didn't know what I knew. That's the part nobody talks about. Not the confrontation, not the lawyer, not the moment Tara's glass hit the floor. The hard part was earlier, The hard part was sitting across from someone at dinner and passing the salt and asking about his day while holding the full weight of the truth inside me like a stone. That took something. I'm not sure I had a word for it then. I think the word is integrity. Not the kind you perform, but the kind that holds you together when everything around you is quietly falling apart. Here's what I understand now that I didn't at 27. The people who hurt you are rarely dramatic villains. They're usually just people who made small choices over and over in the direction of their own comfort. My husband didn't decide one day to dismantle our marriage. He just kept choosing the easier thing and the path of least resistance and the version of reality that required the least from him. That's how it usually goes. Small choices accumulated. That's also I realized how I had stayed so long. Small choices of my own in the direction of keeping the peace, of telling myself it wasn't that bad, of deciding that leaving was more frightening than staying. What changed wasn't one big moment. It was the gradual, uncomfortable recognition that I had been making myself smaller to fit inside someone else's story. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Simone showed me something the night she sat across from me at her kitchen table and asked what I wanted, not what I was going to do, not what the right thing was, not what my options were. What I wanted, it sounds simple. It wasn't. Nobody had asked me that in years, including myself. There's a kind of intelligence that isn't about IQ or credentials. It's the intelligence of knowing when something is over, of being honest enough with yourself to call a thing what it is, even when the naming of it is painful. I had to get there slowly. I'm not ashamed of that. Some things take the time they take. And Tara. I don't think about her with anger anymore. I think about her mostly as a mirror. She made choices that hurt people who didn't deserve it, including Simone, including me. But she also stood in that doorway and said, I owe you an apology without being asked, which took something. People are complicated. The story doesn't need a monster. It just needs the truth. What I want anyone to take from this. If you're in it right now, if you're sitting across the dinner table and passing the salt and holding something heavy, is that you are allowed to be strategic. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to build your case quietly and carefully before you blow the whole thing open. That is not weakness. That is not manipulation. That is a woman who knows her own worth, deciding, on her own timeline, to act accordingly. Keep your name on your own accounts. Keep your career. Keep the friendships that tell you the truth. And when the moment comes, trust yourself. I did, and I kept the dog.